compiled and edited by Tavis Smiley, climbed to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list and stayed there for weeks. The first book by a black-owned publisher to achieve such a feat. The urgency of the issues that matter most to black fellow citizens has only intensified, especially in this critical election year. On Wednesday evening, August 14th, 6 to 9 p.m., come meet Tavis Smiley alongside Covenant contributors including Cornel West, Connie Rice, Mark Ridley Thomas, Elisa Orduna, Tyrone Howard, and Melina Abdullah as they sign copies of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later. You can purchase your books on site and get them autographed. That's Wednesday evening, August 14th, 6 to 9 p.m. in the city of Los Angeles. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Drums, please.
Here it is, a groove slightly transformed. Just a bit of a break from the norm. Just a little something to break the monotony of all that hardcore dance that has gotten to be a little bit out of control. It's cool to dance, but what about a groove that soothes and moves romance? Give me a soft, subtle mix, and if it ain't broke, then don't try to fix it. And think of the summers of the past. Adjust the bass and let the alpine blast. Pop in my CD and let me run a rhyme and put your car on cruise and lay back, cause it's summertime.
I'm Tavis Smiley. That, of course, is Big Willie. Will Smith, Summertime. It ain't summertime until you hear that track, right? In our third hour today, by the way, we'll be talking to Jordan Jones, who plays the character Jazz on the Peacock hit Bel Air. Jordan comes live in studio today in our third hour. Speaking of Will Smith, Bel Air is sort of a reboot-ish of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So we'll talk to Jordan Jones today in our third hour, speaking of one Will Smith. But in this hour, as promised, Mississippi State Auditor Shad White, M.I., crooked letter I, crooked letter I, humpback I. He is the auditor in that great state, the state of my birth. He has a new book out. It's called Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the Welfare Scandal That Shocked America. Yes, before you ask, that Brett Favre, NFL legendary quarterback, has got himself in a hot mess, as we say, down in Mississippi. I've been hearing about this. I've had a couple people on this program in the last couple of years to talk a bit about this, but nobody quite to the level of the auditor of the state of Mississippi, who again has now written a book called Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the Welfare Scandal That Shocked America. The timing could not be more propitious for the release of this book, given that we are now in NFL preseason. Of course, Brett Favre long ago retired, but I'm anxious to have this conversation, so I'm pleased to welcome right now the auditor of Mississippi, Shad White, to this program. Auditor White, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, and I'm honored to be on the program. Thank you for having me.
It's a great delight to have you on. Let me just start with a couple of broad questions, and we'll narrow our way and get into the text as we move through this hour. For starters, I think we understand this, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Every state's a little bit different. What does the auditor do in the state of Mississippi?
You said it correctly. Every state's a little bit different. In Mississippi, the state auditor oversees the audits involving public funds. So our main job is to make sure that government money is spent in the way that the law requires. We also have another office inside mine that does criminal investigations. So if we do an audit and we find that somebody has stolen money or there was a kickback or some sort of corruption involving public funds, we can do a criminal investigation, and similar sort of to the FBI, once we find something, we take it to a prosecutor, and then the prosecutor makes a decision about whether or not they want to indict that individual and haul them in front of court.
So we all know Brett Favre is a legendary quarterback for many years, of course, the Green Bay Packers, then the Minnesota Vikings. Give me some sense then. Again, I'm starting broad. We'll narrow as we move through. Now that we know what you do in the state of Mississippi as its auditor, how did this case come to your office?
We got a whistleblower tip back in the summer of 2019 that suggested that there was something fishy going on at our Department of Human Services. That's the agency here in Mississippi that handles TANF funds, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is commonly known as welfare. Mm-hmm. And so my office did an investigation and did an audit over the course of the next several months. And you asked about Brett Favre and how his name came up. When we were doing this investigation, we found a ton of different stuff. At this point now, 7 people have pleaded guilty. But going specifically to Favre, we found 3 buckets of money that related to Mr. Favre. So the first was $1.1 million of welfare funds had been given to Favre Enterprises. And when we dug into that, we saw that there was this contract that required Favre to give certain speeches and do certain things, and he had not done those things. Now, we have no idea if he knows that contract existed, but for the purposes of the law, that doesn't matter. What we have is a contract. It wasn't complied with, and they got a bunch of money as a result. So that was an illegal expenditure of welfare funds. Second bucket was go ahead.
No, please. I'm sorry. Keep going. Second bucket.
Second bucket was a chunk of money that went to a company called Prevacus. It was an experimental concussion treatment company, and Mr. Favre was a huge investor in this company. That's not an allowable use of welfare funds, sending money to a company like that. And you may have seen a few weeks ago the head of that company, a guy named Jacob Van Landingham, pleaded guilty to federal wire fraud charges related to this very thing right here. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the third bucket was a chunk of money that went to pay for a really fancy volleyball court at the University of Southern Mississippi. That, of course, is where Favre played football. It's where his daughter attended. She was a volleyball player there. And so we identified that as an unallowable use of welfare funds, because you can't build brick-and-mortar facilities with welfare money, and also, maybe more importantly, there was no evidence that volleyball court had ever been used to benefit poor people. So those were the 3 things that we found that came up related to Mr. Favre during our investigation.
Auditor Chad White has laid the case, made the case, laid the foundation, and so now I want to sort of interrogate that. The first thing I want to get to when we come forward is what this case, Mississippi Swindle is the book, Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that shocked America, what this case says about white male entitlement in America. Say nothing of white male wealthy entitlement in America. So you heard him say a moment ago that so far 7 people have pled guilty, but they ain't got Brett Favre yet. 7 people have pled guilty, but not this NFL Hall of Fame icon who is clearly connected to all 3 of these buckets as Shad White just laid out. So I got a lot of questions. He has answers. He wrote the book, Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that shocked America. Shad White is our guest. More than when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Hey LA, today I'm here to talk to you about Grid Alternatives, which is a nonprofit in LA that focuses on renewable energy. We serve communities who have been left out of the renewable energy sector. We offer paid job training, and in 13 weeks, you can become a solar installer. 80% of our graduates get hired into the industry, and once you're hired in the industry, you stop at a high, medium income. That could be $20 an hour or more. 80% of our graduates get hired into the industry. Call today so you don't be left out at 323-861-0105 or gridalternatives.org, gridalternatives.org.
With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283. Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org.
Did you know your life insurance is an asset you can sell? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life. For almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. And at abacuspays.com, we've created a free policy value calculator so you can find out the worth of your policy in just seconds. There are no fees and no obligations. Get real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus. Learn more at abacuspays.com.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle.
Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
If it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide Free and Gentle. This back-to-school season, Tide and Downy are giving back with $1.5 million in scholarships. Enter to win. No purchase necessary. US/TC 17+. End September 30th. Rules. Tide.com/scholarship/official rules.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and the auditor for the state of Mississippi, Shad White, whose new book is called Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that shocked America. If you are a fan of football, you know Brett Favre, legendary quarterback for the Green Bay Packers for many years, and of course later with the Minnesota Vikings. But he hails from the state of Mississippi, where Shad White, again, is the auditor and now the author of this book. Let me start with this, Auditor White, if I can. I'm thinking of that famous Watergate question about Richard Nixon. What did the president know, and when did he know it? What did the president know, and when did he know it? What do we know about what Brett Favre actually knew and when he knew it? And I ask that in part because they're getting everybody around him, but they ain't got him. So is this a case of plausible deniability, or is Brett Favre right that this is a witch hunt and whatever may have happened around him had nothing to do with him? He was in the dark.
Yeah, I think that's the right question to ask. And again, I would state at the outset, Brett Favre has not been charged with a crime here. The main prosecutors who have been engaged in this case, and prosecutors decide who gets charged with a crime, are the federal U.S. attorney for this area, who's appointed by the Biden administration, and then the local DA, who's a Democrat. And so I don't think that I think that they're weighing the merits of every single fact in this case, and they're making their decisions based on that. The big picture question is, what did Mr. Favre know and when? You know, we know based on his text messages that he knew that he was talking about trying to get government funds. So he was texting folks who worked for the government, and they're not individual rich folks on their own. That they were handling government funds. And then he also made a point in text messages to ask if this money was the kind of money that should go to folks in shelters. That was the word that he used. And then on top of that, he asked multiple times in text messages if the public would find out about this, if the media would find out about it, if this could be kept confidential. So those, I think, are the core facts for anybody to know about Mr. Favre. And of course, prosecutors are going to look at everything in this case and everybody in this case and make their decisions about what they want to do. The one thing I would say at the tail end is, you asked about a witch hunt. You know, my office released this big audit that described where all this money went back in the middle of 2020. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that all came out, it's just an audit. It's bland facts about where this money went, but it does mention Favre Enterprises. And because of that reason, it made national news. After that audit came out, we know that Mr. Favre texted some of his associates and said that he wanted to stick it to them. And I take it that them is me or my office. He later went on social media and said that what we were saying is a lie, even though it was backed up by countless documents and pieces of evidence. And, of course, he sued me for defamation for describing what happened with taxpayer money here. So all I'm doing is telling the truth about what happened with taxpayer money and welfare money in Mississippi, and I'm not super concerned if it hurts his feelings for that reason.
What is so much to talk about? I'm glad I got you for the hour. What is the status of that defamation case that Brett Favre filed against you? So
it's ongoing right now. He filed that suit. The Attorney General of Mississippi initially came in as my attorney defending me in that suit. Her staff obtained a copy of my book, and they said that they wanted to read it because they were my lawyers and they wanted to know everything about the case and wanted to represent me well. And then shortly after they got the book, they announced that they would be dropping me as a client. So I've had to defend myself in that case, and my attorneys in my office are also defending me in that case. That case is ongoing right now. I suspect that it'll last a good bit longer because state courts, are going through their process down here. So anyway, it's an ongoing piece of litigation right now.
That last comment raises two additional questions for me in this regard, and we'll keep moving. The first question is, and I could have started this conversation here, but I wanted to start as we did by getting a better understanding of what it is that you do in the state, because that takes me to where we are now, and allows me to ask why a state auditor writes a book. You are a state auditor, but I'm curious, number one, as to why you wrote the book. And then once you tell me that, I want to ask why, when the state who represents you read your book, they decided no longer to represent you. I mean, you are a state employee. And so in your duty, your official duty, if you have a lawsuit against you relative to your duties, then the state ought to represent you. So again, I ask, so we don't get lost here, why did the auditor of the state of Mississippi write this book, and what did the state read in the book that made them drop you as a client?
Yeah, great questions. I wrote the book because I wanted people to know the full story of what happened down here. It's a very complex case. If you've just opened up, your internet browser and you started Googling stuff about this, you can very easily get lost in the tons of articles, both local and national, that have been written about it. So I wanted to put in one place the story of how this taxpayer money got mishandled. And really the big picture goal is for folks to read it both here in Mississippi and elsewhere so that this doesn't happen anywhere else again. The second question of what did the Attorney General specifically read in the book and how did that trigger her dropping me as a client? They haven't clarified fully what they didn't like about the book, but look, in the book, I am very blunt and honest about who stepped up and who did their job in this case and who failed to step up and do their job in this case. So, for example, right after we made the initial arrest and we were working closely with the local DA down here, I went over to the Attorney General's office and I asked the Attorney General to use her attorneys to seize some of the property that had been purchased with welfare funds, but was still being controlled by some of these people who now we know are felons and have pleaded guilty to fraud. And the answer that I got back was no. They never seized any of this property. And when I say property, I mean like vehicles that were purchased with welfare money. Mm-hmm. And now, to the best of my knowledge and my team's knowledge, those vehicles are just gone. They've just disappeared. And so I write in the book about how we missed a huge opportunity to seize some property and to liquidate that property so that the money could go back to poor folks here in Mississippi. But because she didn't do that, I think, and because I wrote about it, I think that raised a lot of anger over in her office, and I suspect that that's the reason why they dropped me as a client.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to those Brett Favre fans, including there are millions? He played a lot of years and won a championship, and is in the Hall of Fame. So he's iconic in that regard. What do you say to those Brett Favre supporters in particular who ask, whatever happened to not commenting on an open investigation? You've gone farther than just commenting. You've written a book called Mississippi Swindle. But to those who ask that question about whatever happened to the notion of elected officials and law enforcement and others not commenting on an open investigation, you say what?
Well, initially, we released this audit, and that's required under federal law, and that spells out where all this money went. And we told the truth. For example, we told the public that some of the money went to Favre Enterprises. And then fast forward a little bit, Brett Favre comes out and says that this is basically a lie. Mm-hmm. So now I face a choice as an elected official, right? I can either let him be the one who is speaking about my staff's work, about the integrity of my staff, the 135 men and women who are career investigators, who are attorneys, who are CPAs, who put their careers on the line and their professional integrity on the line when they write an audit. I could shut up and just let him be the one with the megaphone, or I can tell the truth and I can push back. And so I chose to tell the truth. And then every single time we had an exchange like this, it became more and more clear that people wanted the full story. They wanted to know exactly what happened down here. And so now we're really, to be honest with you, at the end of the case. So we're 4 years removed from when my office arrested the first people in this case. All the facts have basically been dug up. As far as we know, the FBI has finished their process. Really, the only thing left now is for the prosecutors to decide if they want to indict anybody else. And so now is really the perfect time to tell the public what happened here so that people can understand and maybe we can prevent this in the future.
I'll get back to the facts of the case here and these 7 persons who've already pled guilty and the question I raised earlier about white male entitlement. We'll get to that in a second, so put a pin in that. Let me just ask a personal question, if I might. Sure. What is it like? How does one wake up every day and move and do his work and just navigate daily life when you are in a tete-a-tete with an NFL legend? I mean, you're the auditor, and that's a big deal in Mississippi, but you're up against an iconic NFL quarterback in the Hall of Fame. How do you do that dance every day?
Well, it is difficult to compete with the megaphone that exists on the other side. I'll say it that way. You know, very early in this case, before Mr. Favre's name really came up, when we made the first arrest, some of those folks that we arrested were very well-known and influential people down here in Mississippi. Nationally, nobody would know their name, but they're still very influential folks down here.
Sure.
Look, in the first Sunday at church after we made those arrests, I was in the pew, and as we were getting ready to leave, and, you know, at the end, everybody's leaving, and the organs play, and everybody's getting their stuff and walking out. A woman in the pew in front of me who I'd never met turned around, and she confronted me about the people that we had arrested, and she just flat out told me I was wrong and that I shouldn't have arrested those folks. So the reason I'm telling you that story is to say I'm used to it. I unfortunately am used to dealing with this kind of stuff. And so the only thing that makes the interactions with Favre different is that when he tweets something, it goes out to millions of people as opposed to thousands of people. And so I have to trust at the end of the day that the truth that I'm telling will carry the day, that regardless of the fact that I'm not nearly as important as he is or anything like that, and my megaphone it doesn't reach nearly as many people, that I have the truth on my side, and all I do is just keep telling the truth based on the facts and the evidence that we dug up.
This question might seem sophomoric, and maybe it is. I don't think so, but I'm asking because I'm curious as to the response. Why take on a legend of his stature?
You know, it really wasn't a decision to take on anybody. It was really just a decision about whether or not we were going to tell the truth or not. You know, our audit standards require that we tell taxpayers where the money went. And so if the dollars flowed to Favre Enterprises, the taxpayers deserve to know that they flowed to Favre Enterprises. Yeah. The taxpayers deserve to know what the contract said and what they got for that money. The taxpayers deserve to know whether or not the contract was complied with. And so, you know, whether it had been Brett Favre who owned Favre Enterprises or Joe Smith at Smith Enterprises, we would have done the same thing.
Yep. I asked that question to get to this, and I thank you for indulging me in that. It really wasn't an oversimplistic or sophomore question. I was being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I guess. But here's what I'm pressing toward. Whether the person's name is Brett Favre, Tavis, Smiley, John Jones, Tom Jones, Lisa Jones, is neither here nor there. You got to be pretty low down. It's my word, not yours. To steal money from welfare recipients anywhere, but especially in Mississippi. It is the state of my birth. It is one of the poorest states in this country. What kind of person are you to know that you were tapping into welfare money to advance whatever your cause may have been, whatever the end and aim was or is? You're tapping into money meant for the poorest people in one of the poorest states in this country. So I'm not even talking about Brett Favre per se, although he's at the epicenter of this. But talk to me about that part, that these persons tapped into welfare money meant for poor people. Let me be clear. I know the state rather well. As I said, the state of my birth. There are a lot of poor black folk in Mississippi, but there are also a lot of poor white people in Mississippi. So I'm not even making a race argument. I'm just talking about exploiting the poor in this state. Talk to me about this from that vantage point, sir.
That was a particularly infuriating part of this case for me, to look at all the facts once we dug them up and to know that the money could have benefited poor folks. I mean, I'm in Jackson, Mississippi right now. I'm in my office on the 8th floor of an office building. I can look out from my office window right now and I can see caved in roofs. I can see blighted houses. I can see streets that haven't been repaired in decades. This is the kind of thing that hurts your heart when you see it, because you know that it could have made a difference in real people's lives. But I will say this as sort of a silver lining at the end of this. After all of the facts came out in this case, a couple years after we had made our first arrest, a local pastor here, black pastor, asked me for a meeting. And so I sat down and we were just really talking and catching up. And the point that he made in that meeting was, he still did not believe that welfare was functioning well down here to alleviate the real problems in Mississippi. But at the very least, he could go to bed at night knowing it wasn't being stolen anymore. And so if there is a silver lining here, it is the knowledge that we put a stop to the theft of these funds. And hopefully people will use the story of what happened in Mississippi to reflect on whether or not their own welfare programs are actually helping folks or not.
I have a really, 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 really smart audience, and I'm getting all kinds of questions from the audience. I want to throw a few of those at you as we move forward here.
Fire away.
Yeah. Again, you'll see how smart they are. One person says, Tavis, I am curious, before this case began, assuming that Mr. White is a football fan, what team did he root for?
That's a great question. So I grew up in rural South Mississippi. I grew up about 40 minutes from USM, University of Southern Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are Favre fans where I grew up. I'll be honest, for whatever reason, I rooted for the Saints and the Miami Dolphins back in the day. I have no idea why. A lot of people are Saints fans down here. Dolphins, I love Dan Marino. So anyway, suffice it to say, that did not play a role in our investigation, but I appreciate the question. Yeah,
were you, I think I can decipher this based on your last answer. Were you a Brett Favre fan before this case came your way?
Well, look, everybody, I think, who grows up in Mississippi, whether or not you're a Packers fan or you rooted specifically for the Packers, a lot of people in Mississippi looked at Brett Favre and they thought, here is one of our own who made it. He had, this kind of national image of an everyman, had Wrangler commercials, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So again, there was wide respect, I guess, for Brett Favre down here because he was kind of one of us who made it. But look, you can't let any of those facts change what you tell the public once you dig up the truth. I mean, I'll take it down to a much smaller level. Hold that smaller level. I'll let you take it down there in just a second. Don't lose your train of thought. We'll take it to a much smaller level when we come forward. Shad White, auditor of Mississippi, talking about the Brett Favre case on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Multiple reports say Vice President Kamala Harris has picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. We're learning about reaction from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as he talks about Kamala Harris's pick of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. In a post on X, DeSantis called the Harris-Walz ticket the most left-wing ticket in American history. HBCU Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia is receiving its largest ever donation. Michael R. Bloomberg's philanthropic organization announced this week that it's giving Morehouse $160 $75 million. And again, our top story for this hour, multiple reports say Vice President Kamala Harris has picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Looking for a better way to get around LA? SoCal 511 gives you real-time traffic alerts to help you find faster ways around LA County so you can enjoy more time with family, friends, and doing things that matter to you. Visit SoCal511.com or dial 511 on your phone.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A new statue honoring Jackie Robinson, Major League Baseball's first black player, was unveiled Monday afternoon in Wichita, Kansas. The statue was rebuilt and upgraded after it was stolen and vandalized in January. At least 300 people attended the ceremony. Former New York Yankees pitcher C.C. Sabathia and Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, were among the speakers. Robinson's statue is on display at McAdams Park in Wichita, where more than 600 kids play Little League Baseball. The U.S. men's Olympic basketball team is back on the court today. They take on Brazil in a quarterfinal matchup in Paris. 12:30 p.m. tip-off on NBC and the Peacock Network. The U.S. women's basketball team is back in action Wednesday against Nigeria. The Dodgers beat Philadelphia last night for their third straight win. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley continuing his conversation with Mississippi State Auditor Shad White. His book is called Mississippi Swindle. Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that shocked America. In case you've just tuned in, we all know Brett Favre, NFL Hall of Famer, iconic quarterback for the Green Bay Packers initially, and then the Minnesota Vikings. He's a legend in the state of Mississippi, and yet it did not stop Shad White from doing his job as auditor and delving into these allegations that Brett Favre and those around him, somebody, tapped into some welfare money for all sorts of dubious enterprises. And so out of that investigation has come this book, Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the Welfare Scandal That Shocked America. And I'm honored to have the auditor of the state of Mississippi and the author of this book, Shad White, as our guest in this hour. I just asked you, Auditor White, moments ago about Brett Favre and about his popularity in your home state, my home state of Mississippi, and whether or not you, in fact, were a Brett Favre fan before this case came across your desk, and you were making a point and saying you were going to take it to another level. So take it to that level for me, sir.
You know, the story I was going to tell was before this Brett Favre case and before the welfare scandal and all of this. We had a case very early in my tenure as auditor down here, and it involved a very popular local elected official in my home county. And so we investigated this. We ultimately found that he had embezzled some money, took it to a prosecutor. The prosecutor indicted him, and now that person is a felon as a result of his action. But the point that I make in telling that story is that even in some of what might be considered our smaller cases, these are people who are often respected in their communities. And if they've done something wrong, it may be challenging for the public to hear the truth, but that can't stop us from telling the truth about what happened. And so I applied that principle in that case, but you know, you also apply it in a case like the welfare scandal to make sure that everybody knows folks are going to be treated the same way regardless of who they are, and that standard that they're going to be held to is the law, period.
I want to ask two questions, and I think I know the answer to both. And once I get answers to both, I'll move forward with what I'm really pressing toward. You mentioned earlier that you were in church, so I take that to mean that you are a Christian.
Yes.
I believe you are a registered and ran successfully as a Republican.
Correct. We don't have party registry here, but I'm a Republican elected official.
Got it. So I asked those two questions to ask, given all of the talk that we too often get about welfare and the welfare state and welfare queens. And I'm not indicting you in this, but, you know, the truth is the truth, as you said earlier. So much of this pushback, and that's putting it kindly and gently, so much of the pushback, say nothing of the exploitation, the politicization, the bastardization, I can do this all day long, of the poor in this country comes from the right, and oftentimes from people who are not just Republicans, but indeed Christians. Again, sir, not indicting you. I see the work that you have done, and it takes courage and conviction and commitment and character to go against power and privilege in the way that you have, given who Brett Favre was and is. But I say all that to ask how you view welfare, how you view the system, how you view public assistance as one who's both a Republican and a Christian. I'm just trying to get a sense of your views on this and whether or not they mirror or are quite different than what I get from so many other folk on the political right who also call themselves Christians. I digress. Take it away.
Well, you know, I think it's an interesting conversation, and it puts aside for a moment the fraud scheme that we uncovered here and gets to this other bigger question of what should welfare look like, if anything. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in my mind, what we have to focus on when we're designing a program like that is we have to make sure that we don't create an incentive for somebody to not work. So one way that states have tried to grapple with that question, and one way they've spent welfare money, is they've turned welfare into an earned income tax credit. This is a bipartisan idea. It's been popular for the last 30 years. I actually worked on a paper down here with a professor at Tougaloo University, which is an historically black university down here. And so, you know, you got a Republican and you got a buddy of mine, Julian, who's a professor at Tougaloo, agreeing on something, agreeing on a way to spend TANF funds. That may seem strange to folks in national politics because it seems like Democrats and Republicans can't ever agree on anything in national politics. But when you do the work and you study what works and what doesn't, I think at the local and the state level, sometimes you can come to clearer conclusions about what would be good. So that's one example of a thought that I have about how welfare could work better. 30 other states use their TANF funds to do an earned income tax credit. That's the kind of stuff we need to be talking about to reform the program, I think.
I find myself reminding people from time to time that no less than Ronald Reagan Ronald Reagan once called the Earned Income Tax Credit the best anti-poverty program in America's history. That's Ronald Reagan, not Tavis Smiley. Reagan called it, the Earned Income Tax Credit, the best anti-poverty program in history. And yet what Reagan said about the Earned Income Tax Credit is not what you get on the campaign trail, certainly at the national level. When the conversation about welfare, about public assistance comes up, you're not in the Ronald Reagan frame then. They love to use Ronald Reagan as standard bearer for many, many other things, and even that has changed over the years. I'm now doing I'm on my soapbox, so hold on a second, Mr. White. We don't even get the Reagan frame anymore. Trump has pushed the envelope completely off the table, out the door, down the street. So we're not even in a Reagan frame anymore. But I again remind people that when it comes to this anti-poverty program called the Earned Income Tax Credit, even Ronald Reagan once called it the best this country has ever done. I digress on that for now, for what it is worth. I said earlier I wanted to get to this, and so let me go there now. And I'm not naive about this. I've seen this happen more times than I can count in my career, and so have you. But what do you make of the fact that 7 people around or connected to Brett Favre in some way, shape, form, or fashion have pled guilty in this case, this welfare scandal that you write about in your book, Mississippi Swindle? They've gotten everybody but Brett Favre. What does that say to you, if anything, about wealthy white male entitlement in America?
Well, what I would say, and I'll start generally by saying this, prosecutors always are the ones who make the decisions about who gets charged. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case, the prosecutors have chosen to charge those 7 people. They've actually charged another individual, but he's pleaded not guilty and may end up going to trial. Mm-hmm. But they've chosen to charge these individuals. And again, I'd go back to the point earlier. One reason that we separate power among different individuals, I'm the investigator in this case, or one of the investigators, and I don't get the power to charge anybody. We separate that power out. One reason we do that is to make sure that no one individual has too much control over the judicial process. And so the prosecutors in this case the federal prosecutors are appointed by the Biden administration, and the local DA is a Democrat. So really what you hope for at the end of every case is that the prosecutors sit down, they look at the facts, and what they're going to ask themselves is, what are the facts? What does the law say? And what can I prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury of this person's peers? Yeah. And I hope and believe that in this case, like all the others, the prosecutors are going to look at that set of factors, and they're going to make a good decision at the end of the day about who gets charged and who doesn't. Let
me move from one Mississippian to another. Shad White, of course, is a Mississippian and is the auditor of the great state of Mississippi. I'm thinking of my friend and brother Benny Thompson from Mississippi as well. As you all know, Benny Thompson was the brother chair of the January 6th Select Committee that did all the work on what happened on January the 6th to make it possible for Merrick Garland, who was dragging his feet, not moving fast enough to move on this particular case. Shad White is not unlike Benny Thompson in the sense that he has the right to investigate, but not the power to prosecute. But Benny Thompson was very clear after his investigation of what should happen based on the evidence they turned over to the Department of Justice. When we come forward, I will ask Shad White, based on what he has turned over, based on what he has written in this book, Mississippi Swindle, what he thinks ought to happen next regarding one, Brett Favre. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking.
That's what we do around here.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
call your senior Medicare patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Tavis is like George and Wheezy. He's moving on up. Last year, Tavis was number 45 on the Talkers Magazine list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America. Wait for it. Wait for it. The 2024 list was recently released, and Tavis has jumped to number 33 on the list of the nation's most important talkers, making him the highest-ranked African American on the coveted roster. Congratulations to Tavis Smiley from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580. We've got you black.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Shad White, auditor for the state of Mississippi. His book is called Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the welfare scandal that shocked America. You heard me mention a moment ago, Shad White, Benny Thompson, and I thought of him when you made the comment that you are the investigator, you're the auditor here. You don't have the power to prosecute. Neither did Benny Thompson, but he was very clear about what he thought should happen with the evidence, the data he brought forth. So I ask you, sir, based on the data and the evidence you brought forth, what do you think should happen next?
Yeah, Tavis, I've been asked that question. Would it be just, in your opinion, for Brett Favre to be charged or anybody else to be charged? And what I've always said to that is I really don't think about it that way. The way I think about it and the way I think about justice is, did we follow the proper process? So did we dig up all the facts? Yes, I know we did. Did we give the public assurance that we dug up all the facts? We did. We gave everything that we had to the FBI, and they were able to launch their own 4-year investigation. Did the prosecutors sit down and look at all these facts and make a good faith decision? I believe that they are doing that, and regardless of what conclusion they come to, once we conclude that process, that's what you hope should signify that that justice has been done. And so that's the way I think about these questions, and I try to do my job the best I can and not get outside that box.
Yep. I suspect it is possible. You know the case far better than I do. I suspect it's possible. How probable, I do not know. But possible that Brett Favre knew nothing, that he was completely in the dark, or that he was wise enough to at least allow himself plausible deniability in a case like this. I do not know. As I said, you know it better than I do. But what troubles me about cases like these is that when we get everybody around the guy but never get the guy, that does not grow trust in the system. It will not make people in Mississippi have greater confidence and greater faith that its government is serving it well when you get everybody around the dude but not the dude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And what I would say in response to that, and for any Mississippians who are listening, I'd say, you need to remember that it's not just Shad White making the decisions about what happens here. It's not even just your local DA.
Sure.
The state attorney general has authority over this case. The Biden administration's Department of Justice has authority over this case. The FBI has authority over this case. And so really the end state, once we get to the bottom of this and the state and the case is concluded, at the end state, you will be able to say that every law enforcement resource that has jurisdiction has been brought to bear on this thing. And we even had a private CPA firm from Baltimore, Maryland, with no real connection to Mississippi, come down and check our work and our audit. So you've had more eyeballs on this thing than almost any case in Mississippi history. And sometimes people have a difference of opinion about who should be charged at the end of it. Some folks think that nobody should have been charged in this case, even though 7 people have pleaded guilty. So what we have to do is we have to follow the process, follow the law, and make sure that the public understands that this has been thoroughly investigated and the facts have been put out there.
I thought I read somewhere, we'll ask Shad right about this in our remaining moments with him when we come forward. I thought I read something somewhere that Brett Favre at some point in this process had returned some money. Maybe I don't want to misreport that. I'll ask Shad White if my memory serves me correctly on that at some point he returned some money for something connected to this. What I'm pressing toward is whether or not this money ever got back to where it belonged. Did it ever get to the people? I want to put the focus at the close of this conversation where I wanted to put it at the very beginning, on the people. The people who were entitled to this money, the poor people in Mississippi who need these resources. We'll come back to them as we wrap this conversation with Shad White on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Finding a path to a meaningful career, one where you're making an impact and making enough money, it can be tough. There's one path, though, that many young adults are landing on that leads them to careers where they can work outdoors, protect our environment, take on climate change, and get paid while they train. It's the California Conservation Corps. You just have to be 18 through 25 years old to enroll, or a U.S. military veteran through age 29, and you have to be a California resident. That's it. There's no education requirement, no employment history needed. Some Corps members need to finish up high school. Others are college grads. But during their 1 year of service, all CCC Corps members can earn the work experience and certifications needed to become a wildland firefighter, forestry technician, install solar, or build trails in our state parks. Learn how you can enroll at ccc.ca.gov. Do this for you. Become the person you want to be through the California Conservation Corps.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Chad White, was my recollection correct, or am I off base here? I don't want to say anything wrong on national radio, but I thought I read something about Brett Favre at some point returning some money for something. Does that make sense or not?
It does. You're correct, Tavis.
Okay.
So at the end of our audit, he returned $500,000, and then through his associates at Favre Enterprises, committed to repaying another $600,000. Unfortunately, in installments. Unfortunately, those installments did not happen, so I issued a demand letter on him telling him that he had to repay it. This was about a year later. He then repaid another $600,000, but the Attorney General's office, I should say the Department of Human Services, is suing him to get more money back, and then my office is suing him as well to get interest on those funds back, because we as taxpayers don't give out interest-free loans. You got to pay back interest if you got money that didn't belong to you, or that you got as a result of some sort of case that we've had. So anyway, he's paid that portion of the funds back. Your other question, Tavis, was did the money get back to the welfare fund? The short answer is yes. We take those funds when we recover money and we give it back to the fund specifically that it came from. So the money goes back to the TANF fund at the Department of Human Services. So that's where those dollars sit right now.
I got 2 minutes left. Let me ask 2 quick questions. You know this case again and the frame much better than I do. If Brett Favre wanted this thing to go away, it seems to me he'd just pay the money back. I can't imagine he doesn't have it, given all the money, all the millions he made playing football. If he wanted this thing to go away, why wouldn't he just pay all the money back?
You know, I'm not sure, and that's a great question to ask his folks. I have no idea what's in their head, or why they're suing me for defamation, or what's going on there. But you know, for me, it makes my life actually sort of simple. I mean, you just keep your head down, you do your job, and you keep telling people what you've recovered and who hasn't paid the money back yet.
And my final question is this: if Brett Favre did pay all the money back, my earlier assumption was, this case would go away. I'm not so sure I believe that. Because just because you do the crime doesn't mean you avoid doing the time. Just because you pay let me rephrase that. Just because you pay the money back for whatever crime, I'm putting that in air quotes, he's not been charged. I get that. Just because you pay the money back, what you may have done wrong, it's like robbing the bank. You return the money, but you're still going to jail for robbing the bank. So if Brett Favre were in fact to pay all this money back, does that mean that the case would be closed anyway, or not?
The case would not necessarily be closed. Anybody who's been suspected of a crime could pay some money back, and they could still be charged by a prosecutor with a crime after that fact. They still, in that hypothetical scenario that I painted, and I'm not talking about Favre necessarily, I'm talking about anybody. In that hypothetical scenario, if they defrauded the public, they could pay the money back. Prosecutors could still say you defrauded the public.
That's what I thought. I mean, as I said, you rob a bank, you can turn the money back in, but they're still going to charge you for robbing that bank in the first place to send a message. I digress. The book is called Mississippi Swindle, Brett Favre and the Welfare Scandal That Shocked America. The author is also the auditor of the state of Mississippi. His name is Shad White. Auditor White, thank you for the book. Thank you for this conversation. I enjoyed it immensely, sir. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
My great honor. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now, Nichols in 2023. Mills has been cooperating with state and federal officials and agreed to plead guilty to